Hello to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club, where I'm going to continue to add video after video, episode after episode, to my sub-series entitled All That I've Ever Learned from Tony Robbins over the years. At the recent UPW that I attended, I took a number of notes over the 4 days, and one of the things I wrote down is really interesting, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend some time today talking a little bit more about it. It made such an impact on me that I've just seen it now that I'm going through my notes, and I'm reliving that moment, that aha moment that I got at the conference just about a month or two ago. And I'll just show you my notes here, and there they are. And the thing that got my attention is that second last line where Tony Robbins makes a very profound point, where he says, don't try to be correct, try to connect. That in itself is an absolute gem of a point, and something that really is a key lesson that many people don't quite get. Too many people spend far too much time in their lives trying to be right. And by trying to be right, by trying to be bossy, by trying to be smart, you lose an opportunity to create a connection. I remember years ago, my late mother, once said to me about relationships, and more importantly, about husband and wife relationships. She asked me one question, and she said, "Son, do you want to be right, or do you want to be in love? You can't be both at the same time." So what I'll do is I'll cross over and I'll catch this ferry, because it is pretty cool on the Parramatta River here. It's just going behind the trees here. But my mother did mention that question, and it had me thinking for days on end. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be in love? And this is very much similar to what Tony Robbins is also saying. Don't waste your time, don't waste your energy trying to correct people around you all the time. You're better off using your energy to build connection with them, because that connection, that ability to connect, is what makes life worth living, I guess, is one way of putting it. And we've all grown up, we've all been children at some point in time. We've all worked in organisations with other people, and you know how annoying it is when you've got somebody constantly trying to correct you. Because what it does is it puts a dampener, it puts a sour note on that moment. Because when somebody corrects you, you go into defensive mode. Dare I say, you go into fight, flight, or freeze mode, where you start to question yourself, you start to question whether or not the other person likes you or respects you, and it is quite distracting, and hence we feel threatened, and we feel challenged in some ways, and that distraction works to separate people. It brings a barrier between people, and it numbs the connection, it damages the connection, unless of course there's a lot of love, there's a lot of respect in the relationship to start with. In many cases, when somebody tries to correct somebody and that correction is unwelcomed or uninvited, then it can cause grief and it can cause problems, is the point that we're trying to make. We've all got limited time in our lives, and what Tony Robbins suggests is that we should be using that time to build, to maintain, to enhance our connection to those around us, because if you don't use it, you lose it. And we need to continue on a daily basis to build, maintain and enhance the relationships and the connections that we have to those around us, and not to take them for granted. So as my mother said, those wise words that my mother once said to me, you can either be right or you can be in love. And sometimes to be in love means that you need to turn a blind eye to the things that you don't like. I guess being in a relationship with people who are perfectionists would be difficult, because perfectionists are people who are wired for pain, and not only are they wired for tremendous pain, but also all the people around them are also wired for pain, because perfectionists want their world to be and to remain a particular way, in a particular way. And we all know that perfection is fleeting. We can have perfection for a moment or two, but before you know it, the world changes, we change, our partners change, the people around us change ever so slightly. But those minute changes, those ever so small changes, mean that over time we grow further and further apart, unless of course those changes are happening in parallel and head in the same direction, which is not normally the case. I remember years ago, and I've mentioned this on other vlogs, that Steve Hawking, the scientist, the brilliant scientist who sadly passed away, in his book The History of Time, a copy of which my friend Cleo Adonio gifted me many years ago, which I read on the train. And I remember being mesmerized by some of the facts and some of the material in that book, where Steve Hawking said that there is an energy in the universe which nobody can quite understand how it quite works, and that energy keeps on pushing and pulling and causing the planets, the galaxies to continue to expand and to grow further and further apart. So much so that I thought about that and I said, it's amazing how similar that is to the lives that we live and the relationships that we enjoy. How with time, we all slowly but surely continue to grow and develop, but that growth and development in ever so different directions also leads us to grow further and further apart from each other. And whilst we've had people in our lives that we had many common things and many shared interests, what happens over time is slowly but surely we grow apart, and although we may have those common interests, they're no longer as strong or as bold, as vivid as what they once were. So getting back to this topic of not correcting people, but spending more time listening to them and trying to understand them rather than trying to fix them, is a really important and powerful message from the big man, Tony Robbins. And I remember years ago listening to a spiritual leader within the Greek Orthodox Church, the current Archbishop Makarios that we have now, saying that he talks to lots and lots of young people. He through his priests and through others, do confessionals with lots of young people, and there is a common thread, there's a common sort of issue that many young people talk about, and it's the fact that their parents don't trust them, don't respect them, and are continually trying to fix them as opposed to letting them grow and to express their calling, whatever calling that is. And admittedly, a lot of people, whilst growing up, will experiment, will try and figure out who they are and where they fit in the world. And as parents, we need to step back a bit and to listen to our children, listen to our grandchildren, as opposed to trying to fix them all the time. Because by trying to correct people all the time, it gives them the sense that they are dumb, they are stupid, they are unworthy, they are not respected, they are not trusted. And if we're not careful, they end up giving up on themselves because they feel that their parents, the people who are closest to them, have given up on them and don't really think highly of them. And the key message is that, when you're dealing with teenagers, for example, or when you're dealing with people who are growing up, you need to have and to maintain a relationship with them. When children are young, rules are important, boundaries are important. But as we've learnt, and I think as the big man once said, the 2 R's, when children are young, they need rules. When children are teenagers, they need relationships. So instead of doing it arse about like most people do, they try and have a relationship with their children when they're young, And when they become teenagers and young adults, then they decide that they want to have rules and regulations, which doesn't quite work. You need the rules, you need the barriers, you need the limitations when children are young. And when they've grown up, you need to give them wings. You need to let them experiment and to find their own way, and to trust in God's providence, to trust that God will provide and God will protect. But they need to learn, and they need to learn those valuable, sometimes painful lessons themselves. You can't protect your children, because by protecting children, what you're actually doing is you're damaging them in the long run. What we need to do is we need to get to help children grow up and to become society ready by making mistakes and by teaching them that mistakes are a part of growing up. Everybody makes mistakes, but mistakes only come about because we're trying to grow and expand. We're doing things that we haven't done before. We're doing things for the first time that we haven't done before. And by doing them, what we do is we pick up a number of patterns along the way. We learn what works and what doesn't work. And to also understand that what doesn't work today doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to work tomorrow. Because as the big man says, as Tony Robbins reminds us, every single person has a fate, and that fate varies from day to day. Just because it didn't work today doesn't mean it's not going to work tomorrow. Just because it didn't work for your parents, your grandparents, your uncles, your aunts, your family, doesn't mean that it's not going to work for you. Because as we say, there is a fate. Every person has a fate, and that fate needs to be tested. You need to take action. You need to do things to test your fate, to grow, develop, and become a better version of yourself. So getting back once again to what we were saying, it's so easy to go on a tangent and to move away from what we've been learning from the big man himself. Once again, he says, don't correct people around you. Whilst you may have the right intention, in most of the cases, it is not welcomed. Unless you're a teacher, unless you're in a relationship with somebody where it's a teacher-pupil relationship, such as martial arts or sports, or you're in a cadetship or apprenticeship. Now it's fair enough then to have or to give permission to your teacher to bend and stretch you and to correct you so that you can become a better student. But in most cases outside of those types of relationships, when you're too busy trying to correct people, when it's unwelcomed, what happens is, as we said before, it can be damaging. And you get to a point where kids are in their 18s or young 20s, and they look back and their parents are still treating them like little kids, and they wake up one day and they say, well, I'm 20 years of age and my parents still think that I'm 5 and still treat me as a 5-year-old. And as we say, that's something that is not very, very good. And as Archbishop Macarius says, that one of the painful things that kids have to live with is with the thought that their parents don't think highly of them, and they have lost the respect or the hope that their parents have for their children to become good citizens and good people. Children need to be loved. Children need to be given wings, as we say, and in order to do that, we've got to let go ever so gently of the apron strings, as my wife Paula always lovingly likes to put it. And she learnt that from a friend of hers many years ago, where she was told that by all means you can try and control your children forever and a day, but at some point in time, out of love, out of respect, you need to let go of those apron strings so that they can grow, develop, and become their own person. Now, you don't want your children to become an extension of their parents, because that extension could be a limiter. That extension could be not their calling, if you understand what I mean. Now, you've got to let each person in their lives live their life to the fullest, and it's up to each individual to take ownership of their life and to feel as if they have permission to live their life without being judged, negatively judged by their parents or their friends all the time, because, as we said, that in itself is damaging. So the big man says, spend your time connecting, building connections, adding to the emotional bank account of the people around you, because the more you deposit in that emotional bank account, the more trust you build, and the more trust you have with somebody else, the better you're able to communicate with them, the better you're able to work with them to help them grow and develop and become better at meeting the challenges that we're all going to meet in this world. One thing for sure and for certain is that life is going to give everyone a fair share of challenge. You know, we come into this world to deal with problems. Sometimes we deal with our own problems, and other times, you know, we are foisted other people's problems to deal with. But Anthony Robbins once again reminds us that we should be open, we should welcome problems and not to shy away from them, because the more problems that we're able to solve, the more problems we're able to welcome and to embrace, the more we're going to learn, because learning is simply the art of attaching the unknown to the known. The more you know, the more you're capable of knowing. The more you learn, the more you're capable of learning. The more you do, the more you're capable of doing. So this is one of the key learnings from Anthony Robbins. You know, by all means, develop and build an environment of growth and development where you welcome change, you welcome learning, but you know, each person needs to learn based on their own pace, and to to learn the lessons that are right at this particular point of time in their lives. The big man Anthony Robbins reminds us that we need to understand that all people have and experience different seasons, different chapters, different phases of their lives, and we need to encounter and meet people where they are rather than where we are. So this in itself is a big lesson. Just like those poles in the water are in different places and different colours, people also are in different seasons, different phases, different chapters of their lives, and we can't expect them to meet us where we are. We need to proactively reach out and meet them where they are in their lives. And we have different phases, different seasons that happen and occur throughout the day. You know, we all have mood swings. We all feel differently. Some people are morning people, other people are evening people, other people are cranky all the time. But as we know, and as the big man tells us, we need to meet people where they are, which means that rather than correct them, to reach out and to show empathy, to show compassion, to try and figure out where they are and what's making them tick and what's making them behave the way they are. So, as my mother said, we can take two options in life. You can try and be right all the time and be bloody annoying and be one of those sorts of people who is always going to be getting into arguments and is always going to be having issues with their family, their friends, their teachers, and everybody around them. Or you can be flexible. You can be smart about it. And what you can do is you can be loving. And loving doesn't mean being weak by any means. It means that you can show respect, that you can show compassion to the people around you, and to try and help them get through the troubling seasons in their life and help them celebrate the good times in their life. Just like when we're going to have ups and downs, other people around us are also going to have similar ups and downs, and it's up to us to partner with them and to partner with God so that we can make the most of those moments, those shared moments that come every now and then. But we need to hunt for them and we need to create those shared moments is a key point that Anthony Robbins says. So, what are we going to do? Are we going to try and correct people around us all the time? Or are we going to try and use the opportunity, the time, the energy to use our skills, our gifts, to build a bridge and connect with them? Anthony Robbins mentions as well that God gives everybody bricks and rocks in their lives, and those bricks, those rocks, can either be used to build a wall to separate you from other people, or you can use those bricks to build a bridge to connect with people. And dare I say, there's a third way of using those bricks, And we see that all the time, where people use those bricks to throw at each other and to try and injure each other. So we need to use our time wisely. We need to use our time in a way that's going to build, maintain, and enhance the relationships that we have, not only with other people, but also with ourselves. How many times do we take the bricks that God has given us and just use those bricks to build a wall and to separate us from everybody else? Tony Robbins reminds us that human beings, people like you and I, are social beings, and we don't do all that well. We don't do well at all in isolation, in total isolation. So we just need to understand that in order to live a fulfilled life, in order to live a beautiful life, we need to have relationships with other people. We need to have a relationship with ourselves. We need to have a relationship with God. And we need to have relationships with significant others. And we also need relationships with the wider community to feel part of something which is bigger than ourselves, to be part of an extended family, to be part of a church, to be part of a community, to be part of a work, to be part of a school, to be an eternal student, to spend our lives trying to learn, to grow, to connect, to use that knowledge, to apply the knowledge and the gifts that we have to not only help ourselves live a better life, but also to partner with God, to use those skills to help our neighbour and to help other people. So there you go. I think I'll leave it there, but it's amazing. It's amazing how I can pull out my notes from UPW and just find one. Bear with me. Just find one line, and let's remind ourselves again, where Tony Robbins said, "Don't try to be correct, try to connect." And it's a message. It's a powerful message. It's a profound message that we need to remind ourselves every day, and maybe to use it as part of our priming exercise when we wake up in the morning and express gratitude, to also pray to God and to ask God's providence and guidance to help us to not correct people, but to connect with people and to build trust and to express love, and not to be the person, the know-it-all, who thinks they can fix the world, rather than to try and understand the world and to build a bridge with the bricks that God has given us, rather than to use those bricks to create separation, to create isolation, to create loneliness, emptiness, and the suffering that many people feel in this vacuous world that we live in 2023. It really is a shame. It really is very sad. Today I heard the news of a Greek Orthodox man who committed suicide. He was young, had a young family, had everything to live for, and yet sadly, in this wonderful country, Australia, he decided to take his life. And Australia, sadly, is a country that is known for having one of the highest suicide rates amongst teens in the world. And you say, how can it be so? How can a country that has so much to offer so many, a multicultural experiment that is working really, really well, how can this country that is so wealthy, so vast, so beautiful, so friendly, how can this country have a statistic where young people give up hope, young people decide that to take their life is better than to continue living and not have hope for a better future? It's really, really sad. As I say, I'm really puzzled and I just can't get my head around it. But we need to remind ourselves to help the people around us to know that not is all well all the time, and we need to meet people where they're at, to not correct them, not to make them feel stupid, not to make them feel dumb, but to, as I said before, turn a blind eye or turn a deaf ear to some of the things that people may say or do, knowing that we're not all perfect, and we know when we're doing things that are stupid. We know that we're doing things that are not productive, but sometimes we need to do these things in order to build the stepping stones, in order to build the patterns, in order to build a case for a better future. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club, and I look forward to chatting to you again from a different place with a different message of empowerment, where we can live, learn and pass it on, and just add to our library, add to our inventory of skills and knowledge and all the wonderful things that Anthony Robbins has been able to share with millions of people over the past 20, 30, 40 years. Take care. Que tal leme. Bye for now.